Hello friends, my name is Apurv and I welcome you all to my YouTube channel. If you are preparing for Adobe, you might be confused by the unique titles like Computer Scientist 1 or MTS. You might also be wondering how difficult are the DSA questions for the front-end roles. Worry not. In this video, I'm finally going to share my interview experience at Adobe. I know this video has been long overdue. I recently left Adobe after working there for over 3.5 years. Now I can finally give you the full picture. Just to introduce myself, I have close to 10 years of experience in the industry, and currently I work as a staff front-end engineer at Procore. I joined Adobe in May of 2022 as a computer scientist 1 and later was promoted to computer scientist 2 in January of 2024, and I left Adobe in October of 2025. In this video, I'll first start by explaining the different roles at Adobe, then share my personal interview story. Then move on to the overall process, how it works specifically for my org, which was digital experience, and exactly which rounds apply for which roles. Let's jump right in, understanding the different roles at Adobe. At most companies, you will have roles like SD1, SD2, senior SD, staff SD, and then so on. But at Adobe, the engineering roles have unique names. First, we have the MTS track, which is like member of technical staff. It begins with MTS 1, which is like your entry level, let's say you can say freshers, 0 to 2 years of experience. And here in the screen, you can see what it maps. So like P10 is your MTS 1. It maps to like the SD1 of Amazon, L3 or SW2 of Google, and same P1 for Walmart. So that's what it maps to. And then we have MTS2, which is like mid-level engineer, 2 to 5 years of experience. Again, it maps to same SD1 for Amazon and SWE2 for Google. Okay. Then you cross to the next track, which is computer scientist track. Here, the experience starts from 5 to 7 years for computer scientist 1. This was the role that I joined Adobe at. Okay. It is P30. Okay. So then we have computer scientist 2. Now, usually the force level is the staff level at most of the companies, but here it is more like a lead level. Okay, it is not yet staff. Staff is senior CS1. So for CS2, you have experience between 7 to 10 years of experience, and for 10 plus years of experience, you then become the senior CS1. Okay, then you have senior CS2, then principal scientist and senior principal scientist, and then fellow. So those are the different roles at Adobe. I'm going to talk about the interview process from MTS1 to senior CS1 because those are the roles that I have taken interview for in Adobe while I was at Adobe. Regardless whether you're interviewing for a front end role or back end role, the roles remain the same, like MTS1, CS1. They don't change if you're front end or back end. Just wanted to let you know that. And I'm a front end engineer and I'm going to share my experience for the interview of computer scientist 1 front end role. And all the interview process for all the roles I'm going to share for specifically for front end role. So just wanted to clarify that. So let's rewind back to 2022. At that time, I was working at Walmart and looking for a switch. Surprisingly, Adobe wasn't on my target list. But out of the blue, I got a call from Adobe Recruiter saying like that my profile was a good match and they wanted to interview me. My first reaction was like, "What is Adobe?" Because as far as I know, just like you, I used to call it Adobe, not Adobe. At that time, I knew okay, it's called Adobe, not Adobe. And then I was like, yeah, why not? Let's give it a shot. And I'll be honest, I went in completely blind. I had no idea about the rounds, how many rounds, what kind of rounds, whether that's DSA or not. Uh, but the entire process was virtual and conducted over Microsoft Teams. The first round was the JavaScript and problem solving round. This was heavily focused on JavaScript fundamentals. He asked me some output-based questions, and then we moved on to implementation of polyfills. He was also asking me question related to CSS, and he also asked me a couple of DSA questions, not sort of one medium-based questions. They were on one was on linked list and one was on tree. Um, the entire round lasted for around like 1 hour 15 minutes. Um, don't obsess over the questions that were specifically asked to me. This interview was taken around 4 years ago. So Adobe doesn't have a specific question bank. Each interviewer picks their own problems. So just focus on concepts that I talk about in during all the interview rounds. Okay. So that was round one. It went well. For round two, machine coding. That this was my favorite round, and it was a machine coding round where I had to implement an observer pattern. But the interviewer formulated the question in a very different way, and it was not obvious that I have to use observer pattern to solve the question. But I was able to figure it out, and also he had added some complex nuances that forced me to think on my feet. I really liked this interview. It was very collaborative, and we had a very high quality discussion. In fact, I created an article on this specific interview question. I'll link it in the description. Do check it out. So again, yeah, that round also went well. The third round was a React UI round, where the interviewer asked me to implement a specific UI. But the twist was I cannot use any state management like external Redux or internal usage or anything like that. So I figured out that I had to manage the state with the router, and I had to use React router, and with the URL I had to manage the state. This was a very practical, real world front end pattern, and that's why I enjoyed solving this question too. Again, this round went well. Round four was the engineering major round, and it turned out that the person who was taking this round was actually my manager once I joined. And one more fact that all my previous three rounds, all the interviewers were my colleague later, and now they are my very good friends. So yeah, so in my engineering manager round, they asked me questions about code quality practices that I have followed in my experience. He asked me about unit testing, end-to-end testing, performance optimization scenarios from my past work. A lot of hypothetical questions like how do you handle disagreements? How do you convince stakeholders? Like they are trying to test my maturity as an engineer. There are a lot of performance optimization questions. He went into depth of image optimization and stuff. So it was a mix of technical and like a behavioral sort of an interview. Again, I believe this round went well. Now the next and final round was with the director, and it was a system design round. Now, honestly, this was the hardest round. Like he asked me to design a diagramming tool. I'm not sure if you're aware of like something like Lucid Chart or like Draw.io. So basically, you have some shapes, pre-built shape. You have to drag and drop, and then you connect different shapes. Like if you have created any HLD diagram, then you are familiar with this kind of tooling. So since I am a front-end engineer and I focus thoroughly on the front-end part, but the director who had like I guess more than 20 plus years of experience, was a backend veteran. So he was focusing more on the backend part. He wanted to know more about the backend details. I tried my best, majorly focusing on front end and also whatever I could about the backend. I used to. I told him in the interview. I walked out of that interview thinking that that's it. That's it. I feel I'm not getting this job, but turns out that I did get the offer eventually. So I guess my overall feedback would be really good. And yeah, in Adobe specifically, after taking so many interviews, I've seen even if your one round is not good, we don't hire. So I guess somehow I proved that I am worthy of the CS1 role for front end position at Adobe, and that's why I was selected. The entire process took more than a month from the first interview to the final offer. And before accepting, I actually did some reverse interviewing, if you'd say. I tried to reach out to the team lead, but since he was out sick, he asked me to reach out to the manager directly. So I had a call with the manager, half an hour call, where I clarified all my questions regarding the expectations and the team culture, and all my doubts were cleared. And finally, I signed the offer and I joined Adobe in the May of 2022. Now that I've shared my personal interview experience, let's look at the standard interview process for front-end engineers at Adobe. Just for FYI, I was part of the digital experience organization. And while other orgs might slightly differ, this process is specifically for this org. So usually the first round we have is core JavaScript and problem solving. This is the foundational round. This year we focus on the JS internals. We You can expect questions like closures, prototypal inheritance, how does JavaScript execute underneath, and you can expect output-based questions or implementation questions like polyfills or maybe machine coding, right? Anything related to JavaScript. Now I know what the big question you might have: do they ask DSA? Like since they asked me, do they ask in general or not? So yeah, let me clear that right now. 90% of interviewers, including myself, do not ask DSA in this round, and there is no DSA in any other round. We focus on JavaScript in depth. But however, there are 10% people who do ask. How can I tell? Because usually when we take the interview drives, we put all the feedback, including the questions that we asked, in one sheet. So from that, I observed that some people do ask DSA questions to test your JavaScript round and problem solving skills, but it's like less than 10%. So if you're highly lucky, you might get an interviewer who might ask you some kind of a medium liquid question. But for the vast majority of you, uh, it's just pure JavaScript based round. Okay, I hope that helps. Round number two, this is focus on UI coding with React. Okay, you can expect conceptual questions of React like hooks, virtual DOM, and optimizations, and how do you debug React components and stuff. But most likely you will have the most of the time implementing a UI feature, and like that depends on what interview wants to ask. Yeah, but yeah, you can prepare any kind of UI questions that you would implement in React. Okay. Now the next round is web system design, okay, which is like front end system design. Here you will be asked to design system like, let's say, news feed like LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, or like a collaborative editor, or like a lucid chart, or like anything, like anything, any web application is a fair game over here. Okay. Now, heads up, while this is usually a high level architecture, I have seen some feedbacks where interviewer are asked to implement certain part of the design. Okay, like let's say someone would have asked like implement the intersection observer part of like infinite scroll. Okay, that I've seen people ask. Okay, so just letting you know that. Going to the next round, which is the hiring manager round, fourth round. Um, this is taken by the hiring manager, obviously, and here anything is a fair game. Like I have seen managers asking coding questions, system design, focus on scenario-based question like past projects and any technical challenges, trying to understand like what kind of depth they have in the entire software life cycle of their own projects that they have worked on. So yeah, that's the gist of this round. The next round is the directors round. Okay, again here anything is a fair game, but the context matters. Okay, so remember you're talking to someone who is 20 plus years of experience. Okay, they can spot a shallow answer instantly. So have a clear, in-depth knowledge of your past projects, of the entire software life cycle of your past companies. Okay, how do you release, how do you ship, how do you merge, what is the branching strategy, and all those kind of things. And you can be even asked uh, front end system design question or system design in general, not specific to front end, just like in my case, right? So be very well prepared for this round. Okay. So yeah, those are all the different rounds that are there for roles from MTS1 to senior CS1. Now, next I will tell you which rounds are for which role. The process and expectations change depending on whether you're applying for MTS track or computer scientist track. So now let's first talk about the MTS track, which is MTS1 and MTS2, experience ranging from 0 to 5 years of experience. Here you will typically face only 4 rounds, not the 5 rounds that I explained. The system design round specifically won't be there. So you will have JavaScript, React, hiring manager, and director round. The bar here is execution. In the coding rounds, you are expected to write clean, bug free code. For MTS2 specifically, the tolerance for hints is little low. You should be able to solve the problem with minimal hints. Also, even though you are a junior, you are still expected to know the entire software development life cycle of your past projects. Okay, the high level understanding of your entire release process. So that will help you in manager round and director round. Now coming to computer scientist track, which is CS1, CS2, and senior CS1, you will have full 5 rounds. Okay, what all the 5 rounds that I told you. Let me repeat it: JavaScript, React, system design, hiring manager, and the director round. Here, the bar shifts from execution to ownership and strategy. Okay, so in coding rounds, the problem will be intentionally vague. You are expected to drive the discussion, ask about the edge cases, and define the scope before you write a single line of code. Specifically for CS2 and senior CS1, relying on hints is a deal breaker. Even if you solve the problem but needed the interviewer to guide you through the solution, you might get rejected. Okay. And for system design round, here is where most people fail. They know a list of technologies, a list of choices for each approach, list of approaches for different kind of discussion during the interview, but they are not able to justify, and they are not able to come up with the trade-offs. And specifically, if you're interviewing for a role like CS2 or senior CS1, you need to be able to justify your choices and be able to tell what are the trade-offs between the different approaches. Okay. So yeah, those were the differences in the rounds between MTS and CS. So now, before I wrap up, I want to share some more information. One is that sometimes you might have more rounds than what I told you. That is because we conduct the first two rounds, irrespective whether your first round went well or not. So let's say if one went lean higher, one went strong higher, or one said no and one said strong higher, then we might give you another chance for another interview. Now again, that will be based on coding, either JavaScript or React. So in that case, you will have more rounds than what I have told you. You still have a shot at Adobe. Okay, and then thing is, the next one is like the timeline. As I told you, for me, it took around a month from the first round of interview till the offer. But what I have seen is we take frequent interview tries, in which in one day itself we conduct three rounds, almost three rounds. Okay, and within a week you are like done. Like if you are selected, you will know within a week. So sometimes it's, if it's a drive, you will know faster. Now the third thing is that interviews, when I left Adobe in October of 2025, they were still conducted in virtually over Teams. And the last thing is that Adobe has 3 days mandatory work from office rule. So it is a hybrid culture, but only 2 days work from home. Okay. So that was the entire process for the interview for front-end roles at Adobe. If you have found this breakdown helpful, make sure to like this video. I hope you found it helpful. If you have any specific questions about these rounds or any process of interview, drop a comment below, and I'll try to answer it. Thanks for watching, and I wish you all the best for your interview.